Hello, and thank you for joining me for my planning on March 14th and 15th. So, I filmed this earlier this week, but I'm just getting to doing the voiceover and such. And so I'm starting out with updating my tracker. I'm going to update information from Monday to capture what I did after I did my evening planning routine. And I'm using a TWSBI Eco Royal Jade and Rose Gold with Diamine Garland ink. And I'm just counting the tasks that I was able to complete, and then I'm going to color in the boxes. I was able to get 10 things done. That is my goal. Sometimes those things are pretty mundane, but it feels good to cross them off. And then I'm looking at the things that I am going to try to get done for the evening. Now I do have a photo printer. It's from Apple. It's called LifePrint. And the good thing about a LifePrint is it will actually allow you to print a live photo or a mini video, and you hold your phone over it and it will animate it and add sound, which is pretty cool. But to kind of be conscientious of materials, I will print multiple pictures at once and then add them in after the fact. So I'm adding in a picture of my Sailor Mano Nuts pen and a picture of a comment that I got from a listener or a viewer that just meant quite a lot to me. Um, then I'm going into my calendar view and using my TWSBI Eco Glow Green with Ackerman number 28 ink. I am adding in a little small sentence from the day. We had some projected inclement weather, and so I'm just kind of noting that the snowfall was not nearly what was projected. I often find it interesting that a meteorologist is able to maintain a job while being wrong more often than not, which I just find that to be funny. Then I'm going to my weekly, and this is where I do memory keeping. So I'm using my Sailor Mano Nuts with the Sailor Mano Shirakashi ink that came with it, and noting what I did for the day. I look at this as a memory keeping section, so I really don't forward plan in my Hobonichi Cousin weekly spread. At the end of the day, I'm noting what actually happened. And on this day, I had a early release from work, so the beginning part of my day was work, and then I was able to leave a little bit after 11 and picked up my son, and we got McDonald's. He got McDonald's on the way home. And then I got home and built a fire, and my husband and I were able to watch a show together. I was able to get some knitting done, which was very enjoyable. And then I noted that yesterday I didn't finish my memory keeping because I was over at my neighbor's until a little bit late. So I just noted the time I was there and then that I went to bed. I use a box to hold all of my stickers, and so I just kind of flipped through and picked out one from Coffee Monsters Co. that was appropriate. And then I moved on to the daily page to start doing my journaling. And so, of course, the big news of the day was that I had an early dismissal. And so I noted on my journaling that I was actually fairly grateful for an early dismissal as opposed to a snow day, because right now my last day of school is on a Friday, and it's the Friday before Juneteenth. So if I have any snow days, then I have to go back the following Tuesday to finish out the year. So I am very happy to have all of the delays and all of the early dismissals as opposed to a full day off. Having said that, this week was a little challenging for me, and I actually went to bed the night before wanting a snow day and thinking that that would be good. However, in hindsight, like I said, I was actually pretty grateful that I still had work. I also really enjoyed having that time with my husband to sit down and watch a show. We really haven't been able to do that very much the last couple of months. Both of us have been quite stressed out with work and had a lot on our plates. So it was just a nice little reprieve, and it was also nice to have a midweek fire. I think it's actually going to end up being the last fire for this season. As I was doing journaling, it reminded me of something that I needed to note on a task, so I grabbed my Laban Rosa Lilac, which is now inked up with Pilot Iroshizuku Kirisami, and made that notation before I forgot. Sometimes I wonder if I have a little ADD. I probably don't. I probably just have too many things going on, and that's part of being a human. I have an audiobook that I'm listening to on and off right now between podcasts, and it talks about how the human brain was really not meant to hold all of the information that we're asking brains to hold right now. And with all of the advances in technology, which are so wonderful, such as email and smartphones and things like that, we are just continually having to hold on to pieces of information and expect our brain to file it appropriately or use it appropriately. So that's something that I'm thinking about quite a lot right now as I'm trying to teach myself better work-life balance habits and get comfortable with the discomfort of not ending every workday with everything finished and knowing that I can come back to it tomorrow, and that's okay. It doesn't feel okay, but eventually, if I continue to practice this and encourage myself to have grace and kindness towards myself, I hope it becomes more of a habit as opposed to a conscientious effort. And so I would encourage you to do the same. Our jobs are 40 hours of our week, but we have the rest of those hours in the day to do our hobbies, to explore things that bring us joy, to make memories with family and friends and loved ones. And that's my soapbox. I'll step off of it. So I'm wrapping up my journaling and putting my materials away because I get a lot of things out while I do this. And then I am noting that I did my journaling and my memory keeping in my habit tracker. All right, so moving on to Wednesday. I really was wanting to use my Peloton today. So I did a thing. I woke up Wednesday morning and I was not having it. I was very overwhelmed. I would say I was sick to my stomach. I had a meeting with my dissertation chair, and I didn't feel that I had made adequate progress towards what we had talked about. So I actually called out sick from work. And you saw on the page I had kind of a timeline, and I had mapped out in the morning what I wanted my day to look like and what time I wanted to do certain things like read articles and do research and go through budget stuff. And so I marked down what time I actually did it. But I ended up having a very productive day. Now, to be clear, I spent the entire day in bed with a heating pad and with hot tea. I was not feeling well. I was exhausted, but I also knew that by forcing myself to do this stationary productive tasks, it would kind of alleviate some of the anxiety, which may have contributed to not feeling well. Um, and at the end of the day, I believe that is what actually happened. So I was actually able to color off the boxes in my habit tracker for research and articles and felt really good about that. I also had updated my calendar in the day, which was one of the kind of mental looming things that I had on my mind. So then I put in my monthly view, a little notation. And in this, I noted that I took a mental health day. Um, and it was something that when I woke up and I said to my husband, I don't want to go to work, his response was, then don't. Um, and that's just not something that I'm comfortable with. But moving on to my weekly, I am documenting the memory pieces from the day before where I left off and finalizing that day. And then I am putting in how I spent this day. And I did have an opportunity to put some of my health information once I had finalized filming the day before. And because I spent most of the day in bed, I actually had these activities that took up long chunks of time. So it ended up looking a little bare, but that's okay. It was a day that was much needed. And when I went to work the next day and I had colleagues who asked me if I was feeling better, I was very honest and said, I think I was literally sick to my stomach with anxiety and worry. So moving on to my daily journal, I actually wanted to challenge myself to use my TWSBI. Sorry, I pulled out the wrong TWSBI, so I ended up putting it back. My TWSBI Royal Jade and Rose Gold with Diamine Garland. It has a medium nib and it has a very dark ink. And I was very worried about how it would kind of land on the page and how it might show through on the other side of the page. And because I tend to go towards the extra fine or fine nibs. And the Hobonichi has such a small grid, so I was also worried that the writing would just be too big. But it ended up looking beautiful. This ink is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It has this interesting shading to it where it's almost this jade color that comes through in parts of the letters. And then it has this really subtle shimmer that I think is overpowered by the red sheen. And so it it just has so much depth to it. It's it's so beautiful. I did end up getting an entire bottle of this ink, and I'm very glad that I did, because this is going to be something that I am going to pull out multiple times a year. Definitely around Christmas, definitely in March, and maybe even in August. I always associate August with green, likely because it's my birth month. The birthstone is peridot. Um, so when I think of August, I think of green. So I ended up having kind of a lot of positive things to note in this daily journaling. I journaled about having that schedule to keep myself on track. I journaled about uh, being able to go through the budget and look at some things in our budget that I could weed out, um, and set up some reminders for myself for yearly subscriptions that I've already paid for the year and I don't want to get charged for another year. So I set up some reminders to cancel those. And then certainly reading some articles. Oh, I forgot. I went I out to lunch. I took myself out to lunch. I do better with focusing when there's almost chaos around me. So, um, as a student and as a professional, when I'm working on a project, I actually like to go to a coffee shop or a restaurant and have that background noise of other people, um, to distract part of my brain while I focus on what I'm doing. And I don't know what it is about that, but it works for me. So I went to a local restaurant that just recently added a ramen bowl to their menu, and I got a salmon ramen bowl that was absolutely delicious. Then, and this makes me feel like a monster, I apologize, but a family came in with a toddler who was very sick and had that kind of whiny and coughing thing going on, and I could not focus with that. I just kept thinking, gosh, that kid should be at home. Has that child gone to the doctor? Do they need Motrin? And I was worried. So I ended up packing up and going home. And then when I got home, I forced myself to do a project that I have been procrastinating for almost a year. A little bit less than a year, but I do know for a fact that I received the last document that I needed last May, and all I needed to do was upload a handful of documents onto a portal, which was a very simple process, and that was it. But for whatever reason, there was something about this that was really daunting that was keeping me from getting that done. And I think as I was writing about it, that's where I realized I didn't note that on my memory keeping, and I wanted to note that. So I flipped back to do that. Um, so that was a really nice project to get done. And then after people started getting out of work, I started getting some phone calls. So one of my very good friends and former colleagues gave me a call to see how I was feeling because he knew that I didn't go to work, and he wanted to praise me for making that healthy choice, and then also tell me about his day. He just started a new job, so he's weeding through a lot of the kind of new job pieces, and he's somebody that does a lot of his processing out loud, as am I. Um, and uh, then I also had my check in with my dissertation chair. I was pretty honest with him about some of the barriers that personally are keeping me from progressing with my dissertation, and he was understanding of those barriers, but we also came up with a game plan for moving forward. And I found myself writing that I need to stay out of my mind and be present in my life, which reminded me of actually a book title by Dr. Stephen Hayes, where it's a text on acceptance and commitment therapy. Um, and that is a area of interest that I have. So I thought that was funny. But anywho, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this. And I will also be uploading a video of my live planning tomorrow. And of course, I had to make sure I added in my stickers. I ended up adding in 2 for Wednesday because I just felt inclined to do so.